Picture this. It's May 15th, 1525, a hillside near Frankenhausen, Germany. You're a peasant, armed with a pitchfork. Around you, 8,000 other peasants, farmers, blacksmiths, miners, men who've never held a real weapon in their lives. You're facing 4,000 knights, professional soldiers in full plate armor, mounted on war horses, carrying lances, swords, crossbows. The knights have offered terms. Surrender Thomas Müntzer, your leader, and we'll let you go home. Simple, reasonable, a way out. Your leaders refuse. Instead, they tell you to form a circle, link arms, pray. God will protect us, Müntzer says. He'll catch their bullets in his sleeves. You want to believe him. You followed him this far. He promised freedom, dignity, an end to serfdom. For 6 months, the peasant rebellion has been winning. Castles burned, monasteries looted, nobles fled. Over 300,000 peasants rose up across Germany, and for the first time in history, it looked like they might actually win. Then the nobles stopped running and started organizing. The artillery opens fire, not a few guns, dozens. Cannonballs tear through your circle. Men explode, not die. Explode. Bodies ripped apart, limbs flying, blood misting the air. The circle breaks. People run, scream, drop their weapons. The knights charge. For the next 2 hours, it's not a battle. It's a slaughter. By sunset, 6,000 peasants are dead, most killed while running, cut down from behind, trampled by horses, speared in the back. The knights lose 6 men. 6. This isn't the only massacre. It's one of a dozen across Germany in spring 1525. By the time the German Peasants' War ends, 100,000 people will be dead. 99% of them, peasants. The largest popular uprising in European history before the French Revolution, crushed in 6 months. And here's the thing that makes it worse. It was so close to succeeding. If you want to see how the largest peasant revolt in history went from victory to massacre, hit that subscribe button. Because the German Peasants' War is a story of hope, betrayal, and what happens when the powerless dare demand power. This is the story of how 60,000 people died fighting for freedom, and it started with a piece of paper nailed to a church door. October 31st, 1517. Martin Luther, an obscure German monk, nails his 95 Theses to a church door in Wittenberg. He's protesting the Catholic Church's sale of indulgences, basically paying money to reduce punishment for sins. You can't buy salvation, Luther argues. That's not how God works. It's a theological argument, academic, meant for other priests and scholars. Instead, it starts a revolution. Within months, Luther's writings are being printed and distributed across Germany. The printing press, invented just 70 years earlier, spreads his ideas like wildfire. And here's what German peasants hear. Not the theology, not the fine points about justification by faith. They hear the church is corrupt. Authority can be questioned. The powerful are not appointed by God. Wait, if the Pope isn't divinely ordained, what about the princes, the nobles, the landlords? What if they aren't appointed by God either? What if the entire feudal system is just men with swords enforcing their will? That's a dangerous idea. For context, life for German peasants in 1525 was brutal. You didn't own land. You rented it from a lord. He owned you, essentially. You owed him labour, crops, taxes, military service when he demanded it. You needed his permission to marry, to leave the village, to hunt in the forest, to fish in the river. The lord owned the mill. You had to pay to grind your grain there. He owned the wine press, the bakery, the smithy. Everything you did generated income for him. And the taxes were insane. You paid the lord. You paid the church. Tithes on everything you produced. You paid the emperor. You paid local taxes for roads, bridges, defense. By the time everyone took their cut, you kept maybe 20% of what you grew. Bad harvest? Tough. You still owe the same amount. Starve if you have to. Your children? Serfs like you. Forever. No escape. This was life. For centuries. Generation after generation. And everyone accepted it because, well, that's how God made the world, right? The nobles were nobles because God wanted it that way. You were a peasant because God wanted it that way. To question it was to question God's plan. Then Luther questioned the church, and suddenly everything was questionable. The first sparks came in 1524, small uprisings, local disputes, peasants refusing to pay certain taxes, demanding access to forests, wanting to elect their own priests. The nobles crushed these revolts, quickly, brutally, hang the leaders, burn some villages, make examples. Problem solved. Except the problem wasn't solved, because in the Black Forest region of southern Germany, a monk named Thomas Müntzer was preaching something radical. Not Luther's message, something more dangerous. Luther said, reform the church, salvation through faith. Müntzer said, destroy the system, all of it. Nobles, princes, the church. Build a kingdom of God on earth where everyone is equal. Luther was horrified. He'd started a reform movement, not a revolution, but Müntzer didn't care what Luther thought. The peasants are God's chosen people, he preached. The nobles are Satan's agents. God commands us to rise up, to create heaven on earth, now. It was millennialism mixed with class warfare, theology as revolution, and peasants listened. By early 1525, revolts were spreading across southern Germany. Not random violence, organized resistance. Peasant bands formed, elected leaders, created lists of demands. The most famous, the 12 Articles of the Peasants, published in March 1525. It's remarkable, moderate, reasonable. The demands include right to elect their own priests, abolish serfdom, access to forests and rivers for hunting and fishing, reduce excessive taxes, fair courts, freedom to leave estates. They're not demanding communism, not demanding to kill nobles, just basic rights, dignity, a life slightly less crushing. They even frame it in Christian terms, citing Bible verses, arguing this is what God wants. Martin Luther himself should have supported this, right? Wrong. Luther reads the 12 Articles and writes a pamphlet against the murderous, thieving hordes of peasants. He tells the nobles to stab, smite, slay the rebels, calls them mad dogs, says killing them is an act of Christian mercy. The man who started the questioning, furious that peasants questioned too much. The peasants felt betrayed. They'd thought Luther was on their side. They were wrong. Theology was negotiable. The social order was not. Despite Luther's condemnation, the rebellion exploded. By April 1525, over 300,000 peasants were in arms across Germany. It wasn't one unified movement. Dozens of separate bands operating independently with different leaders and different goals. But the scale was unprecedented. Nothing like this had ever happened in European history. And at first, they were winning. The nobles were terrified. They had soldiers, but not enough. The peasant armies outnumbered them 10 to 1. Castles fell, monasteries were sacked, nobles fled to fortified cities. In Swabia, a peasant army of 12,000 surrounded the city of Weissenau. The abbot surrendered without a fight. The peasants looted the monastery, freed prisoners, burned records of debts and obligations. They didn't kill anyone, just destroyed the symbols of their oppression. In Franconia, another peasant army, 8,000 strong, captured Würzburg Castle, one of the most powerful fortresses in Germany. The peasants set up a revolutionary council, began redistributing wealth. For a few weeks, it looked like the impossible was happening. The feudal order was collapsing. Peasants were governing themselves. The nobles couldn't stop them. Then the nobles got organized. The problem for the peasants, they had numbers, but not unity. Each peasant band operated independently. No central command, no coordination. When nobles approached to negotiate, some bands would accept terms and go home. Others would keep fighting. The nobles learned to exploit this, divide and conquer, make deals with some groups, crush others, move systematically. And they had professional soldiers. The Swabian League, an alliance of southern German nobles, assembled an army. 4,000 men, knights in full plate armor, Landsknecht mercenaries, artillery. They were outnumbered. Badly. Didn't matter. Medieval warfare was dominated by armoured cavalry. A knight in full plate armour was effectively invincible against peasants with farming tools. You can't stab through plate armour with a pitchfork, can't hack through it with an axe. Even if you had a sword, you probably don't know how to use it properly. A knight does. He's trained since childhood. Fighting is his profession. One mounted knight could kill dozens of peasants before tiring. 4,000 knights against 60,000 peasants. If the knights could force a battle, they'd win. Easily. The peasants knew this, so they avoided direct confrontation, stayed in fortified positions, hoped to win through numbers and attrition. It almost worked. At Leifheim, 5,000 peasants held a fortified position. The Swabian League attacked. The peasants held, inflicted casualties. Then the League brought up artillery. Medieval peasants had never seen massed artillery before, didn't understand what it could do. Cannonballs smashed through their formations, created panic. The peasants broke, ran. The knights charged. Massacre. 2,000 peasants dead, most killed in the rout. The League lost 40 men. This became the pattern. Artillery breaks the formation, knights charge, peasants flee, knights hunt them down. It happened at Böblingen, at Königshofen, at Ingolstadt. Tens of thousands dead. The worst was yet to come. Thomas Müntzer, the radical preacher, had assembled his own peasant army near Frankenhausen in Thuringia. 8,000 men, mostly miners, tougher than farmers, more organized. Müntzer told them God would protect them, that they were building the kingdom of heaven, that nobles were servants of Satan who must be destroyed. His followers believed him, completely. May 15th, 1525. A combined noble army, 4,000 men under Philip I of Hesse and George, Duke of Saxony, surrounded Müntzer's position. They offered terms: surrender Müntzer, everyone else goes free. Müntzer refused. He told his followers to form a circle, link arms, pray. God will catch their bullets, he promised. Then he pointed to the sky. A rainbow had appeared. A sign! God was with them, the peasants believed, stayed in formation, praying, singing hymns. The nobles opened fire, artillery, crossbows, arquebuses. The first volley killed hundreds. The peasants didn't break, not yet. They were holding the line, praying louder. More volleys, more deaths. The circle fractured. Men started running, dropping weapons, fleeing toward the town. The knights charged. What followed was systematic slaughter. Knights on horseback chasing down fleeing peasants, lances through backs, swords cutting down unarmed men. The lands-necked mercenaries, professional soldiers, moved through the field, finishing off the wounded, executing anyone who surrendered. Inside Frankenhausen, peasants tried to hide, in cellars, churches, anywhere. Didn't matter. The soldiers went door to door, dragged people out, executed them in the streets. By sunset, 6,000 dead. The nobles lost 6 men. 6. Thomas Müntzer was captured, tortured, forced to recant his teachings, then executed. His head was displayed on a spike as a warning. The Battle of Frankenhausen broke the rebellion's back. Within weeks, the other peasant armies surrendered or were crushed. At Saverne, 18,000 peasants were surrounded. They surrendered on promise of mercy. The Duke of Lorraine ordered them executed anyway, all of them. His soldiers spent 3 days killing surrendered men. Couldn't do it fast enough, had to work in shifts. 18,000 corpses, left in the fields to rot. At Würzburg, the Revolutionary Peasant Council was overthrown. The leaders were tortured for days, then executed. By summer 1525, the war was over. Final casualties, approximately 100,000 dead, 95% peasants. The nobles had won, decisively, brutally. The aftermath was worse than the war. The nobles didn't just defeat the peasants, they wanted to make sure this never happened again. They imposed the blood court, special tribunals to try rebel leaders. Thousands were executed, not just fighters, anyone who'd supported the rebellion, spoken in favor of it, failed to report it. Entire villages were punished, collective fines, land confiscated, rights revoked. The surviving peasants lost even the few rights they'd had before. Serfdom was strengthened, made more oppressive. The nobles wanted to crush any spirit of resistance. In many regions, peasants were forbidden from gathering in groups, from traveling, from owning weapons. They dared to rebel. Now they'd pay for generations. Martin Luther, who'd condemned the peasants so viciously, watched the massacres and wrote, "I, Martin Luther, have slain all the peasants, for I command." Philip I of Hesse, who commanded at Frankenhausen, became one of the most powerful princes in Germany. Lived a long life, died in bed at 63. He's remembered as a moderate reformer, supported Luther, tried to unify Protestantism. The fact that he massacred 6,000 peasants, barely mentioned in his biographies. Martin Luther, his reputation is complicated. He started the Reformation, changed Christianity forever, broke the Catholic Church's monopoly on religious authority. He also called for the mass murder of peasants and wrote viciously anti-Semitic tracts later in life. Modern scholars struggle with this. How do you honor the theology while acknowledging the atrocities? You can't separate them. The same man wrote both the 95 Theses and Against the Murderous, Thieving Hordes of Peasants. Thomas Müntzer is the most controversial figure. To communists, he's a hero, an early revolutionary fighting for equality. To others, he's a dangerous fanatic who led thousands to their deaths with false promises. Both are true. He genuinely believed God would intervene, that the kingdom of heaven could be built on earth, that the poor were God's chosen people. He was wrong about divine intervention, but was he wrong about injustice? The nobles who killed him certainly thought the system was just, God-ordained, natural, but they maintained that system through violence, through the threat of violence, through the reality of 100,000 deaths. Who's the fanatic? The man who preached equality, or the system that required mass murder to survive? There's a question historians ask about the German Peasants' War. Could it have succeeded? The conventional answer is no, never. Medieval peasants couldn't defeat professional soldiers, but for a few months they were winning. Over 300,000 in arms, nobles fleeing, castles falling. If they'd unified, if they'd had one leader, one strategy, one army instead of dozens of separate bands, if they'd secured artillery, if they'd allied with sympathetic nobles. Some minor nobles did support the peasants. Maybe. It's unlikely. The military technology gap was enormous, but it's not impossible. The nobles were terrified. The letters and documents from this period show genuine fear. They thought they might lose. That's why the reprisals were so brutal. They weren't just crushing a rebellion, they were making sure no one ever tried again. For 250 years, it worked. No major peasant uprising in Germany until 1789, when the French Revolution changed everything. What would you have done? You're a peasant in 1525. You've suffered under feudalism your entire life. Watched your children go hungry so your lord could buy another warhorse. Then someone says, "We can change this. We can be free. God is with us." Do you join, knowing you'll probably die? Or do you stay home, keep your head down, accept the oppression? It's easy to say, don't rebel, you'll be killed. But people did rebel. 300,000 of them. They weren't stupid. They knew the risks. They did it anyway. Because some things are worse than death. Living on your knees, watching your children inherit the same slavery, having no hope. The German Peasants' War failed. Spectacularly. Tragically. But it happened. That matters. It proved that ordinary people could organize, could dream of something better, could fight, even if they lost. Especially because they lost. The nobles won the battle, but they learned fear. They learned that the peasants outnumbered them, that the system was fragile, that violence was necessary to maintain it. That fear changed things, slowly, over centuries. Serfdom didn't end immediately, but it began to weaken. Nobles started making concessions, not out of kindness, out of fear. Fear that if they pushed too hard, it would happen again. If this deep dive into a forgotten revolution resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments. At what point does oppression justify rebellion? The German Peasants' War started with hope and ended with 100,000 graves. But it proved something the nobles tried to deny. The powerless are only powerless as long as they accept it. The moment they refuse, everything changes, even if it changes through blood.